Millionaire follows poor black waitress who takes his leftovers every day. What he discovered left him speechless. Before we get started, drop a comment and tell us, what time is it where you are and where in the world are you watching from? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get into it. Marcus Cole understood hunger the way most men understand breathing, not as a concept, but as a constant. He was 7 years old the first time his stomach cramped so badly he cried without making a sound, because even then, some instinct told him that crying wouldn't fill it. Real hunger doesn't announce itself politely. It moves into you like a tenant who refuses to leave, clouding your thoughts in school, making the room tilt sideways when you stand up too fast, teaching you to sip water slowly and pretend it's something more. His mother, Dolores, was the kind of woman who could stretch $1 until it screamed. She cleaned office buildings before sunrise, took orders at a diner through the afternoon, and rang up groceries at a corner store until the lights went off. She came home smelling like bleach and coffee and exhaustion, and sometimes on the nights when what little they had wasn't quite enough, she'd set a plate in front of Marcus and wave off his concern with the same gentle lie, delivered so convincingly he almost believed it. "I ate before you got home, baby. I was starving by noon." He'd look at her hands, the dry knuckles, the split skin near her thumbnails, and he'd eat. Because he was hungry. And because some small, shameful part of him chose not to ask twice. He was 45 now. 27 years had passed since he'd lowered his mother into the ground. Kidney disease, caught at a stage where catching it no longer mattered, because she'd avoided doctors the way poor people avoid anything with a copay. He had stood at that graveside in borrowed dress shoes and made himself a promise so fierce it felt like a wound healing shut. He would never be poor again. He would never be helpless again. He would never watch someone he loved sacrifice themselves because the world gave them no other options. And he had kept that promise, violently, relentlessly, without apology. Marcus built his name from concrete and calculated risk. 6 upscale restaurants scattered across the city, each one reviewed, praised, photographed. A glass-walled condo on the 42nd floor where the city looked manageable from a distance. A car that turned heads at red lights. A watch that cost more than Dolores had made in 3 years combined. He had constructed a life so far removed from that cramped apartment, those bare cupboards, that hollow-cheeked boy, that some mornings he woke up and genuinely couldn't connect himself to any of it. That boy felt like a character in someone else's story. Until her. Marcus pressed his back against the alley wall, his tailored charcoal suit suddenly feeling absurd, a costume worn to the wrong event. His collar was open, his pockets square straight, his leather shoes buffed to a shine that reflected the afternoon clouds. He looked, as he always looked, like a man who had never wanted for anything. Everything about his appearance was architecture. And for the past 7 days, he had been hiding behind it in the alley behind his own restaurant, watching a woman he couldn't stop thinking about. She arrived at 3:52 p.m. every day without fail. Medium height, somewhere in her late 30s, though her eyes held the particular tiredness of someone who'd been exhausted for years and learned to carry it quietly. Her scrubs were a faded teal, the kind worn by home health aides or clinic workers, washed so many times the color had surrendered. Her hair was natural, pulled back with a single band, and she wore bright orange rubber dishwashing gloves, the cheap ones sold 3 pairs to a pack, the kind that left your hands smelling like latex in effort. What she did next was the part Marcus couldn't reconcile with the version of himself he'd spent 27 years building. She went through the waste bins. Not frantically. Not shamefully. She moved through the discarded containers and half-touched plates with a focus that looked almost surgical, checking each item, turning it over, placing the usable ones gently into 2 large clear plastic bags like she was curating something that mattered. Pasta returned untouched. Bread from baskets where only 1 roll was missing. Steak sent back because a customer wanted a different cut. Food that his kitchen staff bagged and discarded without a second thought because in a restaurant that generated the revenue his did, abundance was just background noise. His manager had flagged it on day 4. "We've got someone pulling from the waste disposal, Mr. Cole. You want us to handle it?" Marcus had paused for a moment that lasted longer than it should have. "No," he'd said finally. "Leave it." He hadn't explained why. He wasn't sure he could. Something about the way she moved, unhurried, deliberate, impossibly dignified for a woman doing what poverty had asked her to do, had reached through 27 years of careful insulation and grabbed him somewhere behind the ribs. He followed her because he needed to understand it. Or maybe, though he wouldn't have admitted this standing up, he followed her because she reminded him of someone whose memory he'd spent the better part of his adult life outrunning. She walked 45 minutes due east through the city's slow degradation, past blocks where the buildings got shorter and the lawns disappeared, where chain link replaced hedges and concrete crumbled at the edges like old bread. His shoes collected dust. His suit attracted long looks from men sitting on stoops who sized him up with the quiet accuracy of people who had learned to read power dynamics from an early age. He kept his distance, his chest tight with something he refused to name. Then he saw where she was going. The structure at the end of the dirt path wasn't quite a house. It was a collection of intentions: metal sheeting, salvaged wood, a door that had clearly come from somewhere else. It leaned slightly, the way things lean when they've been holding on for a long time with inadequate support. The yard, if you could call it that, was dirt and scrub grass and a single plastic chair missing one leg, propped against the outer wall. She walked toward it without slowing, her orange gloves still bright, her bags swaying. The door opened before she reached it. The boy was small, 6, maybe 7. His t-shirt was faded to a color that had stopped being white seasons ago. His shorts were adult-sized, bunched and tied at the waist with a strip of cloth. He stood in the doorway without running toward her, without shouting her name, with the particular stillness of a child who had learned that calm was safer than excitement, that hope was something you held loosely. His feet were bare on the dirt floor. And his face was the thing that undid Marcus completely. The boy's eyes held the expression Marcus had seen only once in his life, in a cracked bathroom mirror in a 4th-floor walk-up, on a morning when there'd been nothing in the kitchen and school lunch was 6 hours away. It was the look of a child who understands, at an age when he absolutely should not, that the world does not guarantee him anything, who is grateful for scraps, who has learned to read his mother's face for information about whether today will be okay. The woman set one bag down and reached out her orange-gloved hand. The boy took it without hesitation, automatically, completely, and they stepped back together into the dim interior of that small, struggling space. Marcus Cole dropped to his knees in the dirt. He wasn't aware of deciding to. His legs simply stopped cooperating because the full weight of what he was seeing had finally landed. This woman walked 45 minutes each way, every single day in work clothes and dollar store gloves, to bring her child food that wealthy strangers had pushed to the side of their plates. And she did it with more composure than Marcus had managed in any boardroom, any negotiation, any moment of his carefully constructed life. She was Dolores. The boy was him. And the charcoal suit and the 42nd floor and the watch on his wrist were the walls he built to make sure he never had to feel this again, and they had failed him completely because here it was anyway, alive and present and devastating, in a city he thought he knew. He didn't remember standing. He didn't remember moving forward. But suddenly he was 10 feet from the door, and she was back in the entrance, and her eyes went wide, not with fear, but with the particular expression of someone who has been dreading a specific moment and has just watched it arrive. "Please." Her voice was quiet and steady, which somehow made it worse. "I only take what's already been thrown away. I'm careful. I heat everything properly. My son." She stopped herself as though realizing she was offering information she hadn't decided to share. "What's his name?" Marcus asked. His voice came out rough. She looked at him carefully. "Why? Please. Just, what's his name?" Pause. "Tobias," she said. "He just turned 6. 6. The number sat in Marcus's chest like a stone dropped into still water. "My mother's name was Dolores," he said, not entirely sure why he was saying it, only that it needed to be said. "She worked herself into the ground keeping me fed. She used to tell me she'd already eaten so I wouldn't feel guilty taking the last of what we had." His voice broke cleanly, like something that had been waiting a long time for permission. "I knew she was lying. Even at 6 I knew. And I ate anyway." The woman's expression shifted, the wariness softening into something older and more universal. "I own the restaurant," Marcus continued. I've been following you for a week because I couldn't figure out what you reminded me of. Now I know. He breathed in slowly. You're not coming to the back door anymore. Her face began to change. Because starting Monday you're on my staff. Real wages, benefits, health coverage for you and Tobias. And every meal, fresh ones, good ones, made with actual care, is yours. Silence pooled around them in the dirt yard. Tobias reappeared in the doorway, his careful eyes moving between his mother and this stranger in the expensive suit who appeared to be crying. Marcus noticed what he hadn't registered from a distance. The boy's lighter complexion, his sandy hair catching the fading sun. Tobias and his mother did not look alike in the ways the world expected. Marcus understood without needing the story explained that she was carrying weight beyond poverty, the weight of a black woman raising her biracial child alone, in a world that would ask them both, at various points in various ways, whether they truly belonged to each other. And yet she walked this road every day with her chin level and her gloves on and her bags full of salvaged love, making sure that boy never once doubted the answer. Marcus crouched down until he was eye level with Tobias. Your mother, he said quietly, is the strongest person I've encountered in my entire life. And I've been in rooms with people who think strength is something you measure in money. He held the boy's gaze. You're going to understand that someday. I hope it doesn't take you as long as it took me. When he stood, the woman was crying without sound, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her face. I don't even know your name, Marcus said. She looked at him for a long moment. Renee, she said. Marcus nodded slowly, something settling in him like a door finally closing on a room he'd left open for 27 years. 6 months later he still wore the suits, still drove the car, still lived on the 42nd floor. But every evening at close of service he made sure Renee left with bags packed by the kitchen. Not waste, not leftovers, but meals prepared deliberately, labeled warm. And every Sunday he sat at a small table in the apartment he'd helped her and Tobias move into, eating food someone else had cooked, in a room that smelled like a home, learning, slowly, imperfectly, gratefully, that the life his mother had sacrificed everything for was only worth something if he could finally see the people she'd once been.